The question for today is a LeetCode medium question called number of islands. For this question, you are given n by n grids. Each grid has a value 1 or 0, which means the land and the water respectively. You need to return the number of islands that are horizontally and vertically disjoint from other islands. The constraint on either dimension of the grid is 300. Given that the goal is to count the number of disjoint islands, an intuitive thought is to iteratively check if a grid contains an island. If an island is found, we can then use that grid as an entrance to explore the whole island exhaustively before moving on to the next one. And now let's take a look at the pseudocode. I'm going to call this solution iteration plus depth first search, or DFS for short. We'll first have a function in which we iterate through the first dimension m and also a second dimension n. Now we'll check if each grid idx jdx is land. If it's land and not visited, then we'll try to dig deeper into it. At the same time, this is definitely like a new island we haven't explored, so we need to increment the count by 1. In the beginning, we need to have a count of 0. After these 2 for loops, we will be able to return count here. Alright, now let's take a closer look at this DFS function. In this DFS function, we are given a row and a column as our starting point. First of all, we'll need to label this RC pair as visited, so that we don't need to revisit it again in the future. Now I'd like to explore all the directions I have. In each direction, I have a delta R and delta C. In directions, with delta R and delta C, I'll be able to get NR equals to D plus DR, NC equals to C plus DC. Now, if this NR and NC pair is legit, and this grid NR and C is actually land and not visited, if all 3 conditions are satisfied, we'll dig deeper into it. Cool. And let's take a look at this algorithm again. In the beginning, I will go through each of the grid one by one. Once I found that there's an island and it hasn't been visited before, we'll go deeper into it and try to explore the whole island exhaustively. And once I did that, I will plus equals the count by 1, and then we'll move on to the next grid. That's basically the algorithm. Now, let's take a look at the complexity of it. The first thought might be that there are m times n grids to explore, and each exploration can potentially explore every other grid, resulting in an O(m) squared times n squared algorithm. However, if you dig deeper into the code, you'll realize that for each grid that is visited, there are m times n grids. Once it's visited, it will not be revisited again in the future. The overall complexity is actually m times n times 4 because of this for loop. We'll explore 4 different directions for each node. So this is actually the final complexity of this algorithm. Alright, now let's move on to the coding part. I like to start defining some variables. Delta grid equals to grid. Delta m equals to length of grid. Delta n equals to length of grid 0. Other than that, I also need to keep track of the visited states for each grid. I want to keep self.b visited equal to false for underscore in range self.n, and here for underscore in self.n. And because later on we need to explore 4 different directions, I'd like to make a direction variables here. Each direction is a tuple of 2 numbers. It's either +1, 0, -1, 0, 0, +1, or 0, -1. Now I will need to initialize a counter equals to 0 to explore all the grids one by one. In delta n. And as long as this grid idx jdx is an island and it has not been visited, then I should input self.dfs idn videos. Afterwards, I will need to plus equals to the counter by 1. And then I'll just return this function. Now the only missing part is this dfs function, and that's implemented. Define dfs, so it will take a row integer and a column as an integer, and we'll return that. We need to start with setting this visitor variable for this row and column equals to true. Afterwards, we'll explore all the possible directions. For dr, dc, self.directions, this is a variable we prepared earlier. It will be either +1, 0, -1, 0, 0, +1, or 0, -1, one of them. And we can use them to make this new variable nr equals to plus dr, and c equals to c plus bc. nr and c is our next step, but it might be invalid, or it might not be a length, or it might have been visited. So we need to do all these checks. If nr larger than 0, nr is and nc larger or equals to 0, and nc is smaller than self.n. And so grid nr and c is actually a length. Finally, this visited of nr and c is to be false. If all these conditions are satisfied, then we should just step into self.dfs nr and c. This function will help us explore all island exhaustively before finally return here. And then we can plus equals to the counter by 1, right? So this counter will be the number of islands we have at the end. Now let's actually test it out. Oh, that's a mistake here. I should do self.beVisited. All right, now it passes 2 cases. Let's do submission. Oh, now you can see it is around 60% of the users. And yeah, that's the end of this video. Thank you for watching.